Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you've been watching for a little while now, you've probably noticed the ductwork above my head that's been in videos for the past year and a half or so. I started putting this in January of 2021 with the intention of hooking up my different machines to a dust collector. I'd started the process of installing dust collection ductwork for the different machines in my shop. I did that for a little while and then just took a pause on it as some other projects took precedence. And then lately I decided I'd finish it up and get things going on that. So the idea is that I'll have the ductwork running along the ceiling where it's up and out of the way for me. I've got about 8-foot ceilings in my basement, and then everything will terminate underneath my foyer where the dust collector will live. You can see it there to the side of my bandsaw. That way it's out of the way, and I can't really use the space under the foyer because it's too short to stand in. Right now I use it for lumber storage and then storing tools and project parts and that sort of thing. For the time being, I've only got a couple of tools that I have hooked up to this. The first being this table saw and the second being my planer. You'll see in a little bit the planer has a drop right above me with some 4-inch hose that hooks up to it. And then the table saw comes down from the wall and then runs across the ground in front of it to hook up to the dust collection that way. And then I've also got a couple of stub outs in various places for future expansion. So one would be an eventual cabinet for my miter saw. I've got one behind me here up in the ceiling for some future machine, or maybe not, maybe it won't get used. There's a stub coming right off the dust collector itself that will go to the bandsaw. And then kind of above where the camera is right now, I've got a line going over for some eventual sanders that will be at a little sanding station. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Since I'm DIYing this project, that means using heating and cooling ductwork that I can buy at my local big box store. These parts have the drawbacks. For starters, the fittings are all crimped in the reverse way one would expect for dust collection. They're also not well sealed against air leakage, as the expectation is that an HVAC technician would seal the joints after installation. Lastly, the elbows that are commonly available are ones like these articulating elbows. While nice because they can be bent to just about any angle between 0 and 90 degrees, they don't provide as smooth of airflow as the purpose-made dust collection ductwork. I'm starting off here by making a long, sweeping 90-degree elbow with two 6-inch articulating elbows set at 45 degrees. Long elbows have less airflow restriction than short ones, so using two elbows like this is the preferred method. After screwing the elbows together, I give everything a clean with some degreaser to remove the light oil on the fittings. I then proceed to tape everything up to make it more airtight. The next step is to determine the length of straight section of duct that will connect these two fittings. I know how far apart these need to be by measuring their location on the ceiling and set them on the floor to make this part easier. When orienting these sections of straight duct, be sure to orient the seam at the top of the duct since the dust will be sliding along the bottom, thereby reducing friction. This Y fitting is crimped in the opposite way that we need for ductwork, so I need to crimp the downstream end. And so that the crimped ends of other pieces can more easily fit in, I clamped a sledge in my vise to use as a makeshift anvil and flatten the crimping as much as possible. If you can flare the crimping outwards, that helps too. Unless you have a helper, using some hanging strap to mount the duct while you work is a must. You can see that even after pounding the crimping out of this fitting, it's still difficult to get another crimped end to sleeve in. This first Y I'm leaving stubbed out for future expansion, so for now it will terminate in a cap. Getting the articulating elbow oriented correctly to account for the roll of the duct can be a bit tricky. This joist bridging is in my way, so out it comes. Next is the vertical drop going to the dust collector. The branch off this Y will go to the drop for my planer, and the trunk line will continue to my table saw. I've made another long 90-degree elbow for the drop that will serve my table saw and router table. To transition from the 6-inch duct to 4-inch, I need to stack a couple of reducers together. Subsequent to this, I discovered that my local store now carries a 6-inch to 4-inch reducer, bypassing the extra step of combining a 6 to 5 and a 5 to 4 together. While they make duct or pipe hangers that hammer into the joists, here I'm just using an old piece of conduit with both ends hammered flat. These can be wedged in between the joists and will bite into the wood, providing plenty of support for a lightweight duct. The first part of this drop gets a 4-inch Y. The branch will serve my router table, and the trunk will go to the table saw. Each of these gets its own blast gate to shut off airflow. At some point, I may go back and caulk these if I think it's letting too much air through. So that the installation looks tidy, I'm plumbing the drop using a magnetic torpedo level. With that part done, time to continue. This next run features another Y with a branch for a future cabinet for my miter saw that will be capped off for now. After that is a fairly complicated bend to snake around this joist and up into the joist space. This will continue along and ultimately serve a couple of sanding machines. Before that though, I decided it's time to hook the dust collector up to the duct run under my foyer. This dust collector has the inlet rotated 90 degrees from how I'd ideally like it, so I need to rotate the impeller and motor assembly on the cart. I discovered that the 5-inch flex hose supplied with this machine isn't long enough, so I'll need to prop the motor up on some 2x material as a spacer. For this, I cut some lengths of 2x3 about 12 inches long and glued and nailed them together. With the motor mounted once more, time to test it out. I think I'm going to reconfigure the dust collector at some point, and probably replace the separator it came with a Thien baffle, but for now, it's going to be parked in this spot under the foyer. It turns out I didn't make this drop long enough, so I have to add on a short piece. After that is a 45-degree elbow. Then the straight piece connects the dust collector to the rest of the system. Anyway, back to the ductwork. I need to add on about 10 feet of duct to get to the other side of this support beam to the last Y connector I plan on installing. The branch of this Y will go to some sanding machines, and the trunk line will be capped. Likely the trunk won't be used, but it's nice to have the option. Finally, to finish the ducting up, I'm adding a branch for the planer. This will be a short run of 6-inch duct, reduced down to 4 inches, and then elbowed down to a blast gate that hangs from the ceiling. Time to remove the old 2.5-inch flex hose connected to my shop vac, which has worked decently well for a few years. I didn't have it at the time I filmed, but there will be a blast gate coming off of this drop for the planer. I made the flexos long enough to allow my planer to move from this spot and still be connected. For those wondering, this Quick Connect is the quick locks made by YouTuber Izzy Swan. I have no affiliation, I just think it's a nifty product for machines that aren't permanently connected to the dust collection system. Alright, let's do a quick tour of the system here. Underneath my foyer in the back of the shop, the dust collector's hiding. Got it hooked up to a remote control outlet here, which I can control with the press of a button. Coming out, trunk comes up into the ceiling. I've got a stub here for a future machine. Comes across the ceiling. There's one branch that comes off right here, which I intend to connect to the planer. There's another branch that comes off this side, coming over to the wall, coming down to a 4-inch Y. The one on the left goes to my table saw. Which you can see down here. And then the one on the right that will eventually serve my router table whenever I get around to building a fence with dust collection built in. Going back up to the ceiling. The main trunk comes across, loops up through here, through the joists, over the beam supporting the upstairs, and then dead ends into another Y. I've just got that capped off, again for future use. Over here by the drill press. I'm planning on eventually having some sanding machines here, so that'll be the dust collection for those. Now with the tour of the whole system, let's hook some up and see how it works. Well, that'll about do it for this one. I'm super excited to have the dust collection all set up and ready to use, and also to have the project done and no longer just have a piece of useless equipment sitting in my shop. Thanks as always for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.